everyone, how are you doing? It is Tag Tuesday, and this is Faith at Faith and Books. And I've been able to start doing tags again because I'm not watching my grandsons on Tuesday mornings, so I don't pick them up till 11:30. So I have a little bit of free time now. So I am going to do a tag. I was tagged by Talia, the wonderful Talia at Talia Nerds Out. And I just realized that I never completed watching your tag video, Talia. So I'm going to do watch Talia's channel after I finish doing this tag, since I have a bit free time. So this is called, let me get the name right, Read Smart Tag. And it was co-created by, Ruben at Two Readers It May Concern, which I think I've seen a couple of his videos. He's very highbrow, philosophy, classics, very, very scholarly. And he did this in collaboration with Emily of Prose and Petticoats. And I'm sorry to say I'm not familiar with that channel at all, but I guess I should go check it out. I'm going to see if I can turn this just a little bit so you can see my dead orchids that were banished to the screen porch, and I've never done anything with them. Anyway, this is where plants go to die, apparently. Anyway, so this is the Read Smart Tag, and so let me get started. All right, so it is, what is your strategy to stay focused and engaged while reading? Well, I'm pretty good at sinking into a book. I do get distracted by noise and just the fact that I have stuff I got to do. So what I tend to do is use a timer when I find myself struggling. I'll time for 15-20 minutes at a pop. And I also have dedicated times during the day when I read. So I read in the morning. During the day it's more flexible, but I tend to have certain pockets of time during the day when I read, and then I definitely have dedicated hours to reading in the evening. So I think that helps if it's part of your routine. That helps with staying focused. Okay, question number 2. How does your environment influence your focus, and what can you do to optimize it? So I do get distracted by noise, and I live in a house with a lot of people and a house with thin walls. And so I think it was thunder. It's a very gloomy morning this morning. Anyway, you can see how I get distracted by noise. So, and I've always just tried to cope. I try to find a quiet place to go read or whatever. But earlier this year, I guess it was early spring, my husband gave me this wonderful gift, these really nice headphones, and I love them. And it has taken my ability to concentrate to a whole new level because I can put them on. They're noise canceling, but also it hooks up with my phone. And I have just been listening to classical music right in my ears. I can't hear anything else. And I find that I can really just get lost in a book. It's wonderful. So I have never been one to really like this kind of thing because it makes me nervous not to be able to hear things. And you know, I raised 5 kids and I've got grandkids. I don't feel like I can just, sequester myself like that. I need to be able to hear things. But for my dedicated reading times, putting this on, it's really, really helped. I'm just so grateful. And I've always loved classical music, but I discovered Schubert. Guys, Schubert is wonderful. So I listened to a lot of Schubert and Brahms and Beethoven, and I also like Mozart and Haydn, and of course Bach and Vivaldi and Chopin and Mendelssohn. So just, it's also really, really enriched my life in terms of classical music. So yeah, this has really helped with concentration. 3, what methods do you use to retain and recall information from what you've read? I'm pretty sloppy about this. Because I'm not in school. And so, I mean, I do underline, and I know some people really hate that in books, but to me, if it's a paperback and it's a nonfiction, I'm going to underline. It's my book, and I do annotate. So here I'm reading for Red September, I'm reading the Soviet Union a very short introduction. I thought this was only going to take me a couple sittings. I'm going through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I do underline passages that jump out at me, and sometimes I make little notes in the corner. I don't think I see any in here. Well, here I did. I wrote Bolshevik violence for some reason right there. The evolution of Soviet terror. Yeah, the Bolsheviks were always violent, it turns out. They really, that was part of their approach to life. So yeah, here I wrote apologist, because I think the guy's kind of being a little light on Stalin there. Anyway, so that's one example. I'm reading The Lord by Romano Guardini, and I find myself really disagreeing with him at times. So I am, annotating here and underlining. So I'm okay with underlining and annotating. I don't like highlighting because I don't like the yellow, but with a pen or pencil, and I do annotate, and that helps me retain some information. I'm not the best at retaining information, frankly. I have to go over things a lot. But in things like this is a hardback cover of the Aeneid, and I just read that, and I didn't do anything because I want it to be, I want it to be a library copy. I didn't do it for the Aeneid, actually. I could have been writing out quotes from the Aeneid, but I didn't. I just started my commonplace book. Sometimes in the past, I have just gotten a piece of paper and written out a quote that struck my fancy, and I put it up somewhere. But I didn't do it as a habit. This month I've started commonplacing. So, and I do think it does help retain. So I wrote out some from Richard III. I was reading Paul's epistles, so I wrote out quotes from Colossians, and what else? I've been writing quotes from the Gulag Archipelago that I'm reading. So I'm just, a lot of this is Gulag. This is Thessalonians. So I have been starting to keep a commonplace book and write out things that really hit me in my reading. And I do think that's a really good tool for retaining information, but I've just started that. I'm pretty sloppy about it, and I always admire people who are much more systematic about it than I am. Okay, let's see. 4, how do you approach difficult or challenging material? So, my son and I were just talking about the Aeneid, and he listened to a podcast about it, and I went to Spark Notes. So I think there's no harm in getting help if something is hard and complex and you're not familiar with it and you don't know the frame of reference, you don't know the context in a deep way, so you can't really get things that are going on. I think one thing is to just take your time. Like, I have taken a year to read things. I took months and months to read or listen to the life of Samuel Johnson. I took a year to read the Bible. I did it with a podcast. I took a year to read The City of God by Augustine. I'm taking a long time with the Lord. So, because theology is harder, it's a slower read. So if you're into theology or that kind of thing, or reading difficult classics, just take your time. And as long as it's incorporated into your daily habits or weekly habits that you're always going to set aside time, it's a regular routine, it's fine to take your time, I think. The other thing is you have to have permission, give yourself permission to DNF if it just isn't working for you. It's okay. You don't have to read every classic or every difficult book. Maybe that just isn't the right time in your life and you can come back to it, or maybe it just isn't for you, and I'm okay with DNFing things that are too hard. Let's see, I forget now what I'm talking about. Roll. Wait, did I skip? I think I messed up. I think I might have messed up. Oh boy, I probably should go back and look at this. So I did, how do you approach difficult or challenging material? I think I skipped ahead to what role do note-taking and annotation play in your reading process. So I talked about that. The other thing about difficult material is it's okay to get help, like I was saying with the Aeneid. And also, I just remember, I had this memory this morning when I was looking at these questions of, I was going to do a group read of the Brothers Karamazov. And I had read the book before, but I wanted to understand it better. I knew that I had missed a lot. And I remember Alan of the Lonely Bookshelf, and he passed away a couple years ago, recommended this book called, what was it called? The Incarnational Power of the Brothers Karamazov. I forget what it was. It was this scholarly treatise kind of thing, but I read that along with it, and it really helped. So I do think if things are difficult, get help with it. You can get a podcast or watch a video explaining it, lecture series, a book that helps, or even things like SparkNotes. All right, I have messed up the order of these questions, so let's just go to 6. How do you balance reading for pleasure with reading for personal and professional development? Well, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but back when I was homeschooling, I read a lot of books on education and homeschooling. I read a lot of books about parenting and child development, but I don't feel like I had to balance it because that was reading for pleasure. I mean, I was interested in the topic, very interested, and so I naturally gravitated to reading it. So it wasn't, like right now I'm really interested in becoming healthier because I'm 64 and I want to be around a while. And so I've been reading, I've been naturally gravitating to books that talk about health and how to eat better and all that kind of stuff. So to me, there is no real distinction between reading for pleasure and reading for personal development. Okay, number 7, what is the importance of setting reading goals? So for me, the type of person I am, because I'm so ADD, I would be so random, and I would forget stuff that was going on, and I would go off and do other things and leave things unfinished and that sort of thing. So for me, reading goals really help me. And even before BookTube, I was in a group called 52 Books in 52 Weeks, and we were trying to, read 52 books a year, and so I would, plan out the books that I would like, at least the core books that I intended to read for the year. I was in that group for a few years, and then I started BookTube, and BookTube has really sort of, increased my planning. But I enjoy planning, so so that's satisfying, and then I enjoy meeting goals, so that's satisfying. So for me, it's fairly important. I mean, I would be reading anyway, but I think having reading goals and some kind of a structure, not too much structure. I can put too much pressure on myself, and that's not good. But having some kind of structure and reading goals, I think really enhances my reading experience. And then number 8, what are some strategies for overcoming reading slumps or lack of motivation? So for me, backing away from watching things on screen helps with my ability to concentrate. So that would be the first thing. The second thing would be to get back to timing. So make myself read for 15 minutes, even if I'm struggling the whole time to concentrate. Just do it, and then do it again later that day or the next day. And then somehow magically at some point you stop struggling. At least for me, I stop struggling and I start to sink into the book again, and I'm over it. And I can be over a reading slump in a matter of a couple of days. Also, rereading something you really enjoyed, or reading something lighter. If you're feeling a bit burned out, you want something that's kind of refreshing to read. So that kind of thing, reading a short story instead, or an essay on something you're interested in. Just making it a little bit lighter. You're not gonna, if you're in a reading slump, you're not gonna attempt some 500-page tome. That probably wouldn't be a good way to cure that. So now I'm supposed to tag people, and I don't know who's been tagged, but it seems to me that this really is a tag for people who read a lot of nonfiction and classics and stuff. So I think I'm gonna tag Peg at the History Shelf, and Mark at Book Time with Elvis, and Sean Standfast, because Peg reads some, fiction, but mostly she's history. And Mark and Sean both have a mix of nonfiction and fiction. So I'm going to tag those 3 people. All right, and I'll put the tag questions and the people I'm tagging below, and I'll also put the links for Ruben and Emily, and also Talia. And thank you, Talia, very much. And I'm about to go watch your video. So take care, everyone, and happy reading. Bye-bye.